Off-season letters. Okay, this is the letters are going to start coming. However, back in February, the IRS announced that it suspended more than a dozen additional letters, including the mailing of the automated collection notices, which are normally issued when a taxpayer owes additional tax and the IRS has no record of a taxpayer filing a tax return. Okay. So, however, has anybody received any of these CP notices since February 9th? Anybody know of? Any of your clients? No?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay. All right. So anyway, if you get them, let's go over some of them here, the types that you get. Okay. The CP80, its notice is generally sent when the IRS credited payments and or credits to a taxpayer's account for the taxpayer shown on the notice, but the IRS hasn't received a tax return for that tax period. That's a very common one. Okay. The CP59 or the CP759 in Spanish is an unfiled tax return first notice. So they send this notice when there's no record of a prior year return being filed. The CP516 or CP616 is an unfiled second notice. Okay, request for information on the delinquent return as there is no record of a return filed. CP 518 or 618 is a final notice for return delinquency. This is a final reminder notice when there's no record of a prior year return filed. And CP 501 is a balance due first notice. And this notice is a reminder that there's an outstanding balance on a taxpayer account. Okay. Anybody dealing with any of these CPs? No?
The only thing I can tell you, Glenn, is out here in California, we're seeing the state being more aggressive than the IRS with regards to, hey, you haven't filed a tax return. So we've had a couple folks in the last week or two come into our office saying, can you help me with these tax returns that I haven't filed?
Okay. And are they being very aggressive or they give you a lot of time or what?
The windows have been kind of tight and tight with respect to me doing something because the individuals actually sit on those documents for a while. And it's like, okay, you know, as soon as you get these, you want to get them in here as quickly as possible so we can kind of work on those returns for you. So you have a little bit more time considering if you have to pay or get a refund.
Right. Does anybody send out letters like in, you know, summer or something to your clients? Hey, how's everything going? Or, you know, does anybody do that? No? Nobody?
No, not really.
Oh, okay. You know, I used to send letters like in around July, August that said, hey, you want to come in, have your W-4 checked out, or, you know, do some tax planning, or maybe, you know, help you with an IRA or something. And it helps to, you know, to stay in contact with your client, makes for people wanting to come back to you because they see more than just having their taxes done. They see that somebody really cares about them, and they're really, you know, they think about you at tax time, believe it or not. And people are becoming more educated now about the tax law, you know, especially with all these COVID freebies, so to speak, you know, these the PPP, the whatever you want to call all these other things that they've gotten. And now upcoming, probably the next thing you're going to hear is the loans, educational loans being forgiven. You know, I heard the president mention yesterday maybe loans up to 50,000 or something like that. And then I hear about certain states already have forgiven loans. So anybody hear about that? Anybody about educational loans being forgiven totally by your state or so? No?
How far are they going back on those education loans?
Well, as long as they owe. An education loan could be, you know, 5 years, 6 years. I mean, usually they're due after you graduate, aren't they?
I believe so.
Yeah. So, you know, I mean, some of them could be, you know, 6, 7, 8 years old, but they're still paying. So, okay.
Only reason I asked that
Uh-huh.
Only reason I asked that is I had a client yesterday that was asking about going back to 2007 and trying to prove that the education that they have back there. I was like, I'm
Do
gonna
they
get
still
back to
owe
you on
money?
that.
They still owe money from 2007?
So I believe they offset their taxes that year and they're trying to correct it and see if they get, I was like, you're not getting a refund from that far off if
Right.
that's what you're trying to do. But
Yeah,
I just,
I think, yeah, that one I don't think it's going to work. Heather here says you have to start paying 6 months after you graduate, but you can take as long as you need to pay them off. I think it took me like 10 years to pay mine off. What do you have, a doctorates there, Heather? No? Heather doesn't like to talk. No, just the BS. Okay. All right. CP 503, which is a balance due, second notice. This notice is a second reminder that there's an outstanding balance on a taxpayer account. CP 504, that's the final balance due notice. And now you have an intent to levy. Okay, so the IRS sends this notice when payment has not been received for an unpaid balance. This notice is a notice of intent to levy, and that's when the trouble starts. Okay. The 2802C is a withholding compliance letter. This letter is mailed to taxpayers who have been identified as having under withholding of federal tax from their wages. This letter provides instructions to the taxpayer how to properly correct their tax withholding. This one I've never seen in my whole life. Anybody seen a 2802C?
I've seen two
You have?
in 29 years that I've been doing taxes. I've seen two, and the second one was not long ago. And what got me was the lady actually has withholding, but owes like $1,000 to $1,200 every single year, and ends up on a payment plan every single year, having to redo it because she never has enough money to pay it. And they sent her one of these letters.
So Tammy, do you know what the ideal amount to either get back every year or pay or owe?
No.
$999.
How much?
Like below 1,000.
Not 1,000, under 1,000.
Below-
As long as you owe
below-
under
below
1,000.
Yes, below
Okay.
1,000.
Yeah.
Well, and I tell her every year, look, if you just withhold a little bit more, and she goes, I can't afford it. And I'm like, well, you can't afford this either.
Yeah.
But I have two of these ever. And the other guy actually did not have any withholding. And I had done, and how I saw his is I had actually completed, I did an offer and compromise for him and his wife several years ago. And he, in all of his stack of paperwork, he had one of these. And he was somebody that had just walked into the office I was working in at that time. And I muddled my way through an offer and compromise for them because I had never done one, and nobody in my office had ever really done one. And so I really kind of muddled through it because, you know, I didn't know about anybody else at that point in my world.
But you know, the
And I
first one
worked
that,
for Jackson Hewitt.
What's that?
I worked for a Jackson Hewitt.
Oh, okay. The first one you mentioned, I don't think the IRS should have bothered her. I mean, they were very close.
Either. I'm still kind of, I'm not sure why they're sending her that, but they did. And that one was recent.
Right.
But now the other, he actually should have gotten it. His was the first one I had ever seen of that. I'm like, what is this?
Yeah.
I'd never heard of this. Now I do have a quick question. Is anybody getting, have you got clients that are getting these notices that you've got to go and prove your identity? And then I've got these clients who, they don't have a cell phone in their name. They don't have a credit card. They don't have anything that they can prove anything. So then you try and call the line, and I have, that thing that gets you in through that number.
The 800 number?
I can't. Yeah,
829-1040.
I pay for NQ.
Okay.
You know what NQ is, right?
No, I don't.
Okay,
None.
NQ is fast access, fast IRS access, and you pay for. You can pay little or a little more, depending on what you want. But
Oh,
you
yeah.
pay a subscription for it, and they get you through. Like they've already got a rep sitting there in line, and when you call in, then you take that place, and it leaves your whole time is left supposedly.
Yeah,
Well,
Canopy has that program where you pay them a certain amount.
yeah.
I don't know how much, but yeah. And that doesn't sound right. I mean, Iris got a deal with Canopy going.
Yeah, well, NQ has been around for a while, and how I got to them was Eric Green. Eric Green was the one that said something about them and tax help software. But anyway, so I pay for this, and I ended up sending them a message the other day because the IRS identity verification line, if you just call the 830-5084 number, it'll go, sorry, too many people calling in, can't get through, and they hang up on you.
Wow.
Well, I call in through NQ, I can get to them, but I'm left on hold for a long, long time. And I sat on hold the other day for almost 3 hours and finally got to a person. And when she put us on hold to go and check some things, we got disconnected.
Oh,
and
my
it's like,
gosh.
are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Those are the worst.
Yeah. Now, Grace said she's
And
had.
I did that 3 days in a row, by the way.
Wow.
Because I've got 3 different clients that, and the last guy was like, look, do not put us on hold. I said, this is what has happened. Do not put us on hold.
Mm.
And he goes, okay. And so he worked through it without ever putting us on hold. And he took care of all 3 clients.
Okay.
And was apologetic. But anyway, I just wondered if anybody was having the same issue.
Who was that?
Hey, Glenn.
Yeah.
So I'm a new EA, and I'm working on a case, and I'm pretty sure I might have to reach out to you. My client owes about 200,000, and I'm working pretty much doing a tax resolution for him. But like I said, I'm a new EA still. That's an area of service that I'm working on. So do you guys have do I have someone I can reach to or talk to?
Absolutely.
Or can I talk to you guys? Okay.
Yeah, we have several. Anybody here want to volunteer before I give them a name? No? Okay. Where are you living, James?
I'm in Dallas, Texas.
You're in Dallas. Okay. I've got a guy right here down the street from me in Irvine, California. He's good. Maybe I'll just give you his, send me an email tomorrow requesting the name and telephone number. It's George Nunez, or I'll put you in contact with the guy who actually talks on Tuesdays, and he's going to be back, I think, next week. He's the one where his brother was murdered. Remember, he'll be back, I believe, next Tuesday. He's good also, and he's in California also. So. But send me an email and I'll get you. I'll send you both their names.
Okay, because I do. How difficult is it to get rid of a levy once it's placed in place?
It depends. It depends. You have what your backup looks like. So it varies.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
All
right.
So that's Glenn at prontotax.com, correct?
Prontotaxschool.com.
Okay.
Okay.
That's
the
email. That's the.
Yeah. My email is Glenn, GLEN, at prontotaxschool.com.
There we go. Okay.
Okay.
Got it.
All right. Finally, on the business notices, we have the CP 259 or the 959, which is return delinquency. IRS census notice when there's no record of a prior year or return being filed. Again, this is for business returns. And CP 518 or 618 is final notice return delinquency. This is the final reminder that they still don't have a prior year tax return. Okay, David Forney says, What are your thoughts on student loan forgiveness? I just read an article stating the administration is considering 10 to 50,000 in student loan forgiveness. Do you think this would be considered income like other canceled debt? I don't think it's going to be considered income. I really don't. I think it's just going to be forgiven and be like a gift, because you're going to have anywhere from, people owing a couple thousand to people owing. I know my daughter-in-law, she's a physician, and she owes about 250,000. So, you know, so I don't think it's going to be considered income. Okay. Anybody else have thoughts on that?
I mean, I tend to agree with you. I think of it similar to how they handled the unemployment during all of COVID. It's usually taxable, but they made an exception in that case. So it'd be kind of rough to say, okay, we're forgiving everybody, but now you have to come up with the cash to then pay the tax on all of that.
Right. I don't think it's going to be income, but who knows? I mean, your interest rates went up 0.5% today, right?
Yeah.
So who knows? Who knows? Good. So, but stay tuned. We got more. I didn't realize we had more. CP 501 is a balance due first notice. A reminder that they have an outstanding balance on their account. CP 503 is the second notice. CP 504 is the third notice, which in the intent to levy. And then the 2802. Okay, not all letters from the IRS, however, are bad. The IRS has been very nice actually this year with letters coming, helping you. They'll say, hey, you say you have a balance due of $50. You actually have a refund of $300. I've seen a couple of those. Has anybody seen any nice letters coming from the IRS?
Yeah, I got one that was really confusing. This individual, I have to file an injured spouse for them.
Uh-huh.
But as I was working on that, he goes, hey, I got this letter. And it's pretty much saying, hey, you're getting that money back for your economic recovery. So
okay.
Apparently, I'm assuming that he told me that he got it when he really didn't. Or maybe he only claimed the amount for himself and not the amount for his daughter. But yeah, it was really weird to see one go in the opposite direction.
Yeah, and when I get a nice letter from the IRS, I just say thank you in my head and take it. Because they have sent it to me, and they're saying, hey, you were wrong. You're in doing that tax return for your client, but we think it's this, and just take it the same way. Okay. So that's once you submit the information to the IRS, the problem is resolved. And in other circumstances, a letter may even bring good news. The IRS may send you a letter or notice communicating the fact that you made an error and the agency has corrected in your favor. Now, it is certainly true that the opposite can also be the case, and the letter from the IRS should never be taken lightly or ignored. One thing, a lot of people, and somebody mentioned this earlier, they said people sit on those letters and then they come to you like 2 or 3 days before it's due. And it's just human nature, I think, because they fear, they don't know what to do. They're afraid to come and see you about this, and they wait. And then when it becomes D-Day, then they come and see you. Okay. So what do you do, when the IRS is trying to communicate with you? There's some tools. There's an IRS lookup tool on irs.gov. And so like the letters that you get sometimes from the IRS are kind of difficult to read or decipher. So the letters either start with CP or LTR followed by a string of numbers. So write this down, go to the lookup tool in the irs.gov website and figure out what it is that they're looking for, because sometimes you think they're for something and then it's really for something else. So use the lookup tools at the IRS. Okay. Any questions about any of these things that I've mentioned so far? Okay. Heather says, yes, it just happened to me. Were you forgiven, Heather? Heather? Heather.
I believe she was referring to the notice.
Oh, okay.
She just got one of those notices, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Well,
All right.
And you had mentioned on one of these one day about some kind of tool that you can go and calculate up somebody's interest that IRS should be charging them and not to trust Internal Revenue. But I don't remember what the site is.
I don't remember talking about interest tool. Anybody know about that? But I'll look it up. I'll see if there's such a thing. Because, you know, the rates change from time to time. So that would be something that they would have to keep up with. And I don't know if the IRS can do this or not. I don't think it had to do with that. It had to do with like dealing with a W-4, for instance. Okay. Now, Sean just came on. Have you ever heard of that, Sean?
Not a site, but a lot of the softwares, if you plug in, they have late calculations, and you can either manually, like in Drake, there's a page where you can manually enter the interest rates, or use the default interest rate that Drake inputs. But you can go in and calculate the day the tax return was due, the date it was turned in, and then the day of the payment, if it's a different date. These are different dates, and then it'll calculate penalties.
Okay. All right. Yeah, let me know if you find one. Was it Tammy, right?
Yep, it's me, Tammy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I will,
Yeah.
because I'm actually thinking that it was on one of these that I first came on when I first started listening to these, that somebody was talking about a tool. And I don't remember what it is. So I'll have to go back and see if I can figure out what it was.
Okay. All right. And Heather
The
says,
states
yeah,
have them.
the states have them.
Some of them do, yeah.
Okay. Must be New Jersey must have it, huh?
New York does, Jersey, because they want to calculate their penalties later.
Oh, okay. And you
They
know,
arbitrarily just raise it.
somebody mentioned that earlier. Mentioned that California is like you know, they've been sending out these letters that we've just talked about, and that's why there's a big surplus here in California. You know, we're getting some more rebate credits later on this year. I think August, and that's because of our tax law. We're paying too much taxes. And you know, there's a lot of surplus going on. So
You know, if you want to get good at something, you have to hang out with people that are good at that thing. If you want to be big, buff, and strong, you have to hang out with people that are big and strong. You have to eat what they eat. You have to do what they do. If you want to be successful, it's the same way. You want to hang out with people that are successful in their tax business and that you can learn from and that you can emulate.